Okay, in this tutorial we're going to be discussing when to start evaluating your site, and more importantly how to evaluate your website once it's live. While you may have tested for attractiveness and usability, the ultimate level of test is deciding what your conversion rate is, and that's something you won't know much about until you've actually gotten a few thousand interested visitors. That means that you shouldn't actually begin evaluating the data and making changes until your website has been operational for a while. So this section is going to be discussing post-launching testing. We recommend that you wait until you've been getting an average of at least 100 to 150 visitors each day for about a month or so before attempting to draw any conclusions about your website's performance. As you're gathering data, it's important to make sure that you're using a tool which will enable you to collect and analyze the data that you need. While some shopping carts and web hosts come with analytics packages, you can also use Google's free tool, Google Analytics, to gather a wide variety of information about your website and its performance. We talked about in a previous section how to install Google Analytics, and although the Analytics program will give you an almost overwhelming amount of data, there are some key metrics that you're going to want to focus on, and that's what we're going to want to talk about today. The first metric is unique visitors. The number of unique visitors to your website is the number of individuals or computers who have visited your website. If 10 people visited your website and viewed a total of 22 pages, the number of unique visitors is still just 10. The goal short term is to be getting at least 100 to 150 unique visitors a day to your website. The next metric is page views. The number here refers to the number of times pages were loaded on your website. The number of page views on a given site will always be equal to or greater than the number of unique visitors. In the example I just mentioned, if there were 22 page views, the higher the number of page views are per visitor, the more effective your website is. If visitors come to your website but don't look at very many pages, you might want to do some further testing. Next is pages per visitor. This metric is calculated by taking the number of page views and dividing it by the number of unique visitors. In many cases, it can be used as a way to measure the involvement of your users. If the number of pages per visitor is close to 1, it means that most people are leaving your website without ever viewing a second page. Conversion rate. The conversion rate refers to the percentage of visitors that complete a specific action. In most cases, that action is a sale, but some websites will use information request forms, user registrations, or user sign-ups as the conversion goal. Many consider the conversion rate to be the ultimate measure of a website's success. If you receive a lot of unrelated traffic or traffic from social media websites, which typically don't usually convert very well, you may find that your overall conversion rate is diluted by unqualified traffic. In those cases, you'll need to examine conversion by source or keyword instead of a site-wide rate. This will also give you some insight into what types of traffic are most profitable. If you ignore every other metric, always remember conversion rate. This is ultimately the metric that matters because it is the metric that equates to sales and to money. Bounce rate. Bounce rate refers to the percentage of visitors who see just one page of your website before leaving. Although it's highly unlikely that you'll ever reduce your bounce rate to 0, you can certainly use it as an indication of which pages aren't fulfilling the needs of your visitors. Rather than looking at the overall site bounce rate, you may find it more effective to study the bounce rate for each individual page of your website. By examining the bounce rate of each page, you'll be able to figure out which pages represent the weakest entry points into your website and make adjustments as necessary. Recent reports indicate that some search engines are also beginning to use bounce rate as a measurement of site quality for ranking purposes. If your pages have high bounce rates, you could ultimately find yourself losing traffic to competitors who have spent more time working on improving theirs. Let's talk about some more metrics. Next is the time spent on your website divided by the total number of pages viewed. The time spent on your website is closely tied to bounce rate, but there is a small difference. This figure deals more with the visitors who actually stick around to view more than one page. By looking into the details in your analytics program, you can figure out how much browsing people do before making a purchase, or how much time it takes people to buy certain items. For instance, if you find customers who purchase a certain item view several pages and take much more time to get to checkout, it could mean that the information they need isn't easy to access. It could also mean that the product in question requires a longer sales period, and you should develop more content and support for viewers who are shopping for similar items. Next is average sale amount divided by average order size. To determine your average sale amount for a period, just divide the total dollar value of all of the sales by the number of the orders received. These figures will vary depending on your products and market, so you should initially strive more for constant improvement rather than a specific value. To improve your average sale amount, you can experiment with several techniques. First, consider your cross-selling opportunities. If you sell two complementary products, it's important to make sure that every buyer of one is also aware of the other items. You can also improve the average sale amount by increasing your prices or carrying more valuable products. If you sell a product you've created or one that's exclusive to your website, this is an especially viable technique. In some cases, you may notice that the number of sales decreases, but the average sale amount and overall profitability increase. It may still be preferable to maintain the higher prices. Upselling is another powerful technique for increasing your average sale amount. By offering more expensive and feature-rich alternatives to customers who have just placed items in their cart, you can reasonably expect at least a small percentage of those customers to take you up on the offer. Bulk discounts and free gift or shipping promotions can also help your average sale amount. Depending on what you sell and who you sell it to, the options are virtually endless. The next is cost per conversion or cost per sale. Cost per conversion can be calculated by dividing the total cost of bringing traffic to your website by the number of sales made to get that traffic. For example, if you spent $100 on pay-per-click visitors and that turns into 4 sales, you spent $25 per conversion. If your profit before advertising costs was over $25 per sale, then you know that you're making money. Because there are 2 parts to cost per conversion, there are always 2 factors you can work on to improve it. First is the cost. Decreasing the cost of each visitor should always be a priority. A few pennies may not seem like much, but if you can reduce the cost of each visitor by a couple cents, your savings will definitely add up over the course of thousands of visitors. You may also focus on increasing the conversion rate, as we discussed above. A favorable change is either in either factor, increasing or decreasing your cost or increasing your conversion rate will improve your cost per conversion. Next is your page load time. This is actually one exception to the rule. You must wait for more data to make changes to your site. You don't have to wait for a lot of visitors to make sure that you have a very fast load time. You should always strive to make sure that your site loads quickly. Web users are notoriously impatient, so more loading time nearly always means less money in your bank account. The short path. This refers to the number of pages users must click through to get from the front page to your website to the product they're looking for. Although it's not unusually wise to put all content on one page, you don't want to force your customers to click needlessly through categories and subcategories. Unless you have many thousands of products, you shouldn't have more than 2 layers of categories. If your users hit the front page and click on snowboards, then men's snowboards, then blue, they've probably been forced to click too many times. Check out the way other sites in your niche deal with the categorization and navigation if you need ideas for dealing with the display of your products. Finally, abandonment. No, we're not talking about family issues here. What we're talking about are visitors who come to your website and go as far as actually putting an item in your shopping cart, only to leave the site without completing the transaction. No matter what you do, you'll never completely eliminate abandonment on your website, but what you should do, however, and it is to minimize the abandonment rate. To lower abandonment, you must understand why it happens. Think about your own shopping experiences. Have you ever been interrupted by a phone call while shopping? Have you ever been ready to buy until you saw the crazy shipping costs? Have you ever decided that you needed an item in a hurry and left the website in search of a closer brick-and-mortar retailer? These things happen, and quite frequently, but they're not always the fault of the retailer. You just have to accept that there may not be much you can do to eliminate all of these scenarios. On the other hand, plenty of abandonment occurs for different reasons. Users might have been confused by the checkout system. Perhaps there were too many forms and the visitor got discouraged. Maybe it took too long to load the pages of your website and the user left in frustration. It could also be the visitor was afraid to share his or her credit card information. If these factors could be affecting your site, and it's important that you do something about it. If you use Google Analytics, like we showed you how to install in earlier sections, you can actually set up a funnel system to show you where you're losing users in the checkout process. You can specify which pages make up the checkout process, and Google will let you know what percentage of users actually make it through each step. In this manner, it becomes very easy to figure out exactly where the problems are occurring. So what you may want to do is set up a test. First thing you want to do is, once you've had a chance to evaluate what's going on with your site, you can make a list of changes that might help increase your conversion rate. If users are looking at a lot of pages but not buying, you might speculate they don't trust your relatively unknown site. Let's say that a site sells drum sets. In brainstorming ways to change that, you come up with the following list of problems and potential solutions. Perhaps visitors are afraid to share their credit card information. You can add a trust logo to enhance credibility and make visitors feel more comfortable. You can improve your copy, the content on your website, and make it sound more professional. You can change the color scheme of your site to match your niche. The current site design is light blue, but you're starting to think your users would rather see something a little bit edgier. Maybe you need more pictures. Since the drum sets are quite expensive, maybe users need to see more photos before they'll be ready to buy. Lower your shipping costs. Unfortunately, this one is just wishful thinking, right? You've already been assured that you're getting the best possible rate for your purchase level. Poor choice of product line. Maybe the problem is actually the specific product you chose. If you're an affiliate marketer or a drop shipper, this can be changed at little to no expense. When testing, it's best to implement just one change at a time. If you make 2 changes at once, you might not see any changes in your conversion rate. You might assume that it was a quick way to figure out neither factor mattered, but the truth is one of the changes might have improved your conversion rate while the other decreased it. For that reason, we found it simplest to stick to one change at a time. To determine what change should be tested first, we recommend that you choose between the most sensible and logical. If you don't have the money for a site redesigned, don't test new color schemes and layouts first. Instead, try changing your copy and photos or adding a popular logo like McAfee Secure, Control Scan, or the Better Business Bureau's Online Trust Badge. These changes may seem relatively simple, but they could bring big changes to your website's conversion rate. Other issues you want to consider: errors. If you suspect your site may have spelling or grammatical errors, you may consider hiring a proofreader or copywriter to look things over and make changes to your ads as necessary. Misleading ad copy. If your ad copy is creating expectations that your website doesn't fulfill, you need to change one or the other. Overall professionalism. Does the site look professional? Does it match the tone of the products you're selling? Layout. Is it hard to find your call to action? Does it take a while to find the most important product facts? Sometimes exceptionally simple layout changes can make a huge difference. Exit pages. Use your analytics program to determine where visitors are exiting your website. Restructuring a couple of pages may be all it takes to dramatically improve the performance of your website. Technical difficulties. This is especially problematic for websites that use flash or video clips. In most cases, these elements should be avoided for that reason. If you do wish to implement more advanced features, however, create your page in a way that makes it possible to navigate and use the site without them. On-page copy. Do your products have enough description? Do they have too much description? Does the description make sense? Enlist the help of friends or acquaintances to make sure the most important questions are being answered without going overboard. Do you have a purpose? It shouldn't take much more than 10 to 20 seconds for a visitor to scan your website and figure out what it is that you do. Most users are disturbed by websites that attempt to do too much, so a clear focus is important. If you want to sell unrelated products, purchase another website and maintain it separately. Required pages. Although you're free to conduct your website in whatever way you see fit, you should understand that there are some pages that users have come to expect on all commercial websites. If you lack a return policy, contact page, privacy policy, or About Us page, your users will be less likely to trust your website. Depending on your niche, certain other pages may also be expected. Price. As with traditional business, price is one of the most significant issues that can impact your conversion rates. If anything, the effect is actually more pronounced than in brick and mortar stores, given the ease of comparison shopping online. Are they selling the item for significantly more or less? To find out if price is an issue, start with a quick survey of your competition. If everyone else is selling the item near cost, you may not be able to do much about it, unless you hope to make very little on it in hopes of bringing in new customers. On the other hand, if you have room to move on the price, you can try dropping it down to near cost to see if the price might be the problem. If it sells well at a lower price, you can slowly adjust it upwards until you reach a nice profitable middle ground. Payment methods. Small retail start out by using PayPal or Google Checkout, as both make it easy to accept all major credit cards. While these services provide outstanding value for entry-level retailers, they have been known to confuse some shoppers. Even though you don't have an account to use them, many people are under the impression that you need one, which can discourage them from completing a transaction on your website. So many people think that in order to use PayPal, they have to have a PayPal account, and so they're confused and they just don't buy using PayPal, even though PayPal is just processing the credit card. Having a merchant account of your own can often improve your conversion rate, and that's why we recommended for you getting your own merchant account. There are several reputable companies out there. If you're using another service that doesn't allow you to accept all major credit cards, though, you should look at setting up PayPal or Google Checkout at the bare minimum. If you can't accept Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover in some manner, you will lose customers. Although some sites continue to offer payment by check or money order, these payment methods become less common with every passing year. Unless you cater to an older demographic, you probably don't need to accept checks and money orders. Wire transfers, purchase orders, and CODs are similarly unnecessary in most cases. In general, the more methods of payment and order placement that you allow, the more sales you'll make. Of course, if you don't wish to spend your time tracking handwritten orders and checks, it may be smarter to offer fewer methods. As you implement changes, you'll also want to establish a log to document your changes. This will help you remember which of your site's progress is working. Just also remember which date ranges are affected by each set of changes, offering you a clear long-term picture of your website's progress. It may also prove helpful if you maintain a log of screenshots of your site as changes are made. That way you'll have both objective and subjective information to look back on. Before you start testing, remember there are no guarantees, and some of your site tests could hurt your website in more ways than they can help. For that reason, you need to make sure that you have a backup copy of your website before you change anything. Your hosting company, HostGator, can help you do this if you're unsure on how to do it. Depending on how many visits you get each day, you may need to wait anywhere from a couple of days to several weeks before determining whether or not your changes had a positive or negative effect. Understanding the concept of statistical significance can help greatly when it comes to testing. According to Wikipedia, in statistics, a result is called statistically significant if it is unlikely to have occurred by chance. A statistically significant difference simply means there is statistical evidence that there is a difference. It does not mean the difference is necessarily large, important, or significant in the common meaning of the word. A basic statistics book can help you learn more about the concept, but advanced mathematical knowledge certainly isn't required. When in doubt as to whether or not something has happened by chance, just let your test go a little longer. If it keeps happening, it's probably caused by something you've done recently. You should also keep in mind that certain days of the week or months of the year may have varying conversion rates. For sites that specialize in consumer goods, the holiday season is especially successful. For business-to-business sites, weekdays generally see more activity. Over time, these patterns should become clear for your site. For testing purposes, this means that you should take these factors into account before drawing conclusions. Don't run a test during the 3 slow days out of your week and assume the changes hurt your site. Similarly, don't make the mistake of believing that something bad has happened when your consumer-oriented site's traffic slows down in January or February. If you find that your changes have a negative effect on conversion rate, don't get frustrated. Instead, just revert your site back to the way it was and test something new. Persistent testing is one of the most common traits of all successful internet marketers and advertisers. Now let's talk about ways that you can test to increase your average order size. Although nearly all site testing is directed at improving conversion rates, you may also wish to target other aspects of your website's performance. Sometimes getting the same number of buyers to spend more money is just as good as getting more visitors to spend any money. If that sounds confusing, don't worry. Average order size. If you're holding it steadily at a 2% conversion rate after dozens of changes, you might want to try increasing the average order size instead of focusing on changes to increase conversion. If you see you have around 200 buyers each month, increasing the average order size by 10% could mean $2,000 more in revenue. So how might we go about increasing order size? Number one is cross promotion, and the second is upsell. If two products on your site go well together, your visitors should know it. Amazon is extremely successful when it comes to cross promotions. Just check out any product page and you'll see sections like most frequently bought together and customers who bought this item also bought these items. These types of suggestions appear on almost all successful e-commerce websites because they're extremely effective. Upselling. If a customer comes to your site looking for a basic alarm clock, you have an outstanding opportunity to convince them that a normal alarm clock just won't cut it. To do this, you might try promoting a more expensive iPod compatible model or a clock that plays nature sounds to help you sleep. It's important to be careful with this tactic though. Despite the fact that we all want nice things, there's a chance that you could turn your shoppers away if you go too crazy. If you make the cheap alarm clock seem worthless, your potential buyer might just look elsewhere for an affordable clock that isn't portrayed poorly. Remember to enhance your high-end products, but don't disparage your more affordable offers. And finally, just knowing when to move on. If you've been running tests and making changes to no avail, there may come a point at the time when the most intelligent course of action is to cut your losses and move on to a different niche. I've outlined a few points to consider when you're trying to decide whether or not you should just close up shop. Before we go through this, though, we'd like to point out that we're talking about discontinuing the promotion of a particular product, not all your business hopes and dreams. This persistence is how good business people get closer and closer to success with each attempt. Versus demand. When you're just getting started, it's easy to ignore the numbers. Go back to the reverse search tool and check your niche's search volume again. Were you overly optimistic in the beginning? Has there been a steep drop in demand since you got started? If that's the case, you may be wise to find a new product. On the other hand, what if the demand is still there? Think about how people are searching for your product. Are they searching for Vans shoes while you're selling Vans lookalikes? Try thinking about it subjectively. Are you selling an item that's either too low end or too expensive for the market that's doing the searching? Did you decide to sell women's ballet slipper style shoes but pick up a really ugly style? Sometimes numbers don't tell the whole story. If you misunderstood the intent of your searchers and you think it's worth another try, then go for it. After you've solicited some opinions from people who belong to your target market, don't let the guys tell you how to purchase women's clothing, and don't let a bunch of your girlfriends tell you how to pick truck accessories. Yes, it's stereotyping, but stereotypes exist for a reason. In many cases, they're not too far from the truth. Unless you're trying to serve a very small fraction of a given market, you'll need to aim for the 80-90% of the people who fit the stereotypes associated with your products. And finally, look at your competition. If your competition is doing well and you're not, you have a problem. Ask yourself the following questions to help pinpoint the problem. How much more or less is your competition charging for the items in question? Is your competitor's site more attractive? Enlist objective help in determining this one. Does your competitor offer better sales or better customer experience? Sign up for their newsletter or browse their site to see things from a customer's point of view. If you have no competition, it may just be that no one wants what you have. Although most problems with the competition are things that should have been detected during the market research phase, the pre-launch phase, don't beat yourself up too much. Everyone makes mistakes. Once we realize the imperfect understanding is the human condition, there's no shame in being wrong, only in failing to correct our mistakes. Because small changes can mean huge differences in your income, you should definitely keep studying your website's analytics and trying new techniques until you find something that works. Once you find a rate that you're happy with, you can now shift into low maintenance mode and watch your sales roll in. Even then, remember that some of the cheapest and most effective marketing is actually what you do with the visitors who are already in your website. Bringing in new visitors is expensive, but increasing conversion on the visitors you already have can help amplify the effects of all of your marketing efforts. In summary, The most successful websites are the ones who monitor their website performance and constantly make changes to attempt to improve their conversion rate. There are several indicators to your website's performance. It takes a consistent flow of visitors, about 100 per day, to identify patterns and possible areas for improvement on your website. The ultimate performance metric on your website is your conversion rate. The number of buyers divided by the number of visitors will help you determine that. 1 to 2% is average. Anything above that, phenomenal. There are 3 ways you can improve your website. You can increase the number of qualified visitors you bring to your website. If conversion rates remain static, more visitors mean more money. Second, you can increase your conversion rate. By convincing more of the visitors who come to your website to buy, you will increase your website revenue. Third, you can convince the people who are buying to spend more money. This is done via upselling and cross-selling. There are many factors you can change and test on your website, including product price, product placement, and ad copy, such as a 30-day money-back guarantee instead of a 7-day, etc. It's important that when you make a change, you leave that change for a period of time, maybe 30 days, for example, while you track the results. If the change improves conversion rates, increases traffic, or increases average order size, it was a good change and probably should be implemented. If it lowers any of those things, remove the change and attempt another one. Remember, not all websites will make millions, and sometimes through testing you may identify that a website is not performing. This could be because there's not enough demand for the product or service you're offering, or your price is just not competitive. If a website is not generating enough income to justify your time and energy in promoting it, try something else. Give yourself several months of testing before deciding whether to spend time perfecting your existing site or moving on to a completely different product. This covers the section on post-website launch testing. By now you should have your website up, you should be getting traffic, and you should be now converting your website and making it more and more profitable. We look forward now to discussing some of the other ways you can monetize your website.